Men, it's no secret that we don't relate as well to others as our beautiful counterpart wives. Today, we are going to talk to marriage expert Greg Smalley, and we're going to discuss how men can add certain tools to their relational toolbox. Hey guys, today I'm excited to have Greg Smalley on our podcast. Greg lives in Colorado with his beautiful wife, Erin, of over 32 years. Dr. Greg Smalley serves as the Vice President of Marriage at Focus on the Family. Together with his wife, Erin, they counsel couples and have led marriage seminars around the world. He's also the author of 20 books, including Men's Relational Toolbox, which is our subject for today. Hey, Greg, it's great to have you on the show today, man. Thanks so much for taking the time to call in.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm excited to hear about relational tools. Being a dude who's been also married 32 years, man, we've had our struggles, and you think, man, is my marriage okay? I mean, I'm struggling here. But you wrote a quote, and I want to read this to you. You said, after overcoming struggles early on in my own marriage, I knew I wanted to be a hands-on and helping other couples. Can you and Erin are the marriage experts. Tell us about the struggles that you faced in your marriage that led you to this point.
Yeah, one word, conflict. We just poorly managed conflict early in our marriage. We really didn't know what was going on, but I would say Aaron and I are both what I'd call fighters. So when our buttons get triggered, we tend to pursue each other and want to debate and argue and get critical and all of that kind of stuff. We created this pretty nasty cycle to where we just would spin around and around and around. My big button as it still is probably the same big button, but I just didn't know back then I had a big button around failure. So if I was feeling failed as a husband, as a father, at work, wherever, so if Aaron would go, hey, we need to talk about whatever. And I would hear that as, oh, great. She just wants to give me more reasons why I'm a total failure. So I'd defend myself, and she struggles with feeling invalidated. So like if she shares a feeling or an opinion, she wants me to really validate that versus I wanted to defend myself. Now I wasn't worried about her. I was worried about me. So we got into this negative cycle that just probably 3-4 years into our marriage, it got so bad that we shut down. Our hearts closed. And when Jesus, the only time he ever talked about divorce was, Moses permitted you to divorce because of the hardness of your hearts. And we were there. We were stuck, frustrated, wondering, did we marry the wrong person? Like, did we miss this somehow? Like, what, is it my fault? Which couldn't have been my fault, but is it her fault? Or, in our hearts hardened to each other. I'm so grateful that there was a couple from our church just observing. Like, I don't even know how they knew this. I don't know what we were doing at church that even would have tipped them off. But this woman called over to our house, a little apartment, looking for Aaron. Her name was Carrie. And she goes, hey, Greg. I said, hey, Carrie. She goes, can I talk to Aaron? And I said, no, Aaron left. Well, her response was, oh, Greg, I'm so sorry. I was so afraid that this was going to happen. And I'm going, wait, what? Like,
to the store?
She's at the store. Like, what do you know? What are you talking about? And it truly, she just went, I'm humiliated. But she goes, okay, maybe this is God's deal, but if I'm being honest, we've just been watching you guys. We know you're not doing well. How about tonight? Come over. Let's talk. And we did. That was the first time that we were able to be honest, going, yeah, we're hardened to each other. Like, we don't like each other. We don't want to be married to each other anymore. And they just basically said, well, too bad. You're not going anywhere. You're going to get help. You're going to go to this counselor. We're going to walk with you. And they're a beautiful part of our 32-year love story now. So,
well, I always tell people I married an angel and woke up with Satan. and she tells people she married a dream guy and woke up in a nightmare. We hated each other for 2 years. I mean, it's funny now, but I mean, I prayed that God would take her out. I mean, I did some horrible, horrible things, and
Yeah.
so we got married August 1st, '92, so probably right around when you guys did, and
Yeah,
so
May 30th.
yeah,
Yeah,
so you're a little bit ahead
92.
of me,
Yeah.
man. Oh, you
Yeah.
got me.
I've got so much more wisdom
Oh, you
and
know it, babe. Well, you
experience
got
in
the gray
those
hair. I
couple
got the
months.
nothing.
Yeah.
Well, so it's really interesting. So here are two guys. We've got 64 years between us. We married women who we were in love with, and then quickly that changed. And so how you wrote this book, The Relational Toolbox, with your dad, Gary, and your son. So talk to us about these tools, because the men bring some tools into a relationship, but I mean, I think our women would gladly acknowledge that we're lacking a few relational tools here.
Yeah. Well, in really the reason why we framed it around a toolbox is because I think culturally, guys, husbands, we get beat on around, you think about some of the classic, the King of Queens, or everybody, loves Raymond, or some of the older shows, to where the husbands are just the buffoons, and thank goodness that there's a strong wife there to rescue and make sure the family's doing well. And so I think it was in light of those shows, kind of their popularity, we just kept going, you know what, here's the deal. God has given men some amazing strengths. We need to celebrate that. And we need to affirm our men to say, you know what, actually, God, as you are an image bearer of the Most High King, and He has given you some amazing tools. My ability to problem solve and to be able to start to think about how to fix something. um you know Aaron was driving one time with our kids, in kind of before any sort of reliable GPS, but something went on with her phone, lost network connection. She's totally lost, like just driving in some state. So she pulls over. She's on now one of the old, corded phones, a phone booth, going, I don't know where I'm at. I'm freaking out. Please get me home. What she wasn't at that moment wanting me to do is to go, oh, Aaron, oh, I am so sorry. I can only imagine how scary that is. I imagine there's been other times in your life where you felt lost. Tell me what she didn't want that at all. She wanted me to figure out where she was and to problem solve how to get her home. And so again, there's some natural things that as men we bring to our marriage that we should celebrate in say that that's how God made me, recognizing that not all those tools that I have already probably aren't necessarily the right ones in some areas of our marriage. So when Aaron and I are in conflict, where Aaron is hurting, she don't want me to pick up the problem solving tool. What does she want me to do? She wants me to use that compassion or whatever, to care, to lean in. And so it helped me to go, listen, I've got some great tools, and I want to celebrate that and keep using those at the right times. But I also want to acknowledge that there are times in my marriage to where a tool is needed that I may not possess. So how do I acquire that, add it to my toolbox, and then just keep, growing and moving forward?
No, that's so good, man. We bring so much to the table as men, and our goal of the Men Arena podcast is never to beat down men. It's to say you are the hero in this story that God has placed you in, and when you get it, everyone wins. You're talking about the problem solving tool, and in your
Yeah,
book you said for most men, solving problems presents an opportunity to demonstrate their competence, their strength of resolve, and their commitment to relationship. So it's
that's right.
just knowing when to use that problem solving tool and when to pick up another tool in the toolbox. How about the fact? I love this one, the fact giving tool. How about that tool with men?
Yeah, I think that's really where, when Aaron and I are talking, and let's say she goes, hey, let's go out to coffee. and and she'll say, hey, tell me about your day. Well, I got up at about, this morning, got up at about 6 and it's a little bit tired, didn't sleep that great. And, I start giving her the facts of, of what's going on. Or when she's talking, she might be talking about something emotional, and I'm going, okay, but tell me about this or that, because oftentimes the facts are what helps me to understand what's needed to then to solve something. And so oftentimes, my wife wants to connect heart to heart with me. She wants to see my inner life, my hopes and dreams and fears and emotions, and that's all in there. But for me, it's just easier for me to begin to talk about certain facts. Um, I had a meeting, that lasted for 2 hours, and then I'm ready to move on. Like, I just told her what I did, but then she'll go, "Well, okay, so 2 hour meeting, was it scheduled that way?" Well, actually, it's supposed to be 15 minutes, and then so she can draw me into to unpacking some of the inner life around that. But it's recognizing that not every guy. I always use kind of the 80-20 rule, that a lot of these generalizations probably work for about 80%, but there are certainly 20%. You and I have a good friend, and his wife, is way more fact finding and geared to solve, where he's way more emotional and is geared more that way. So, which is beautiful, but it doesn't always apply. But for most guys, we're when asked, we're probably going to err on the side of giving a lot of the facts and details, which again, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's needed at work. When my boss asked me, he don't want me to say, well, what, actually, I'm glad you asked, because I've really been struggling just with this particular, employee or situation. And, it's really depressing. I mean, he's wanting me to go, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what went wrong. And here's how I'm going to mitigate that.
Hmm.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, oh yeah.
Home with her wife, I don't think she wants me to walk through what went wrong and how, honey, we're going to mitigate this thing between us.
Well, and I'll tell you, for my marriage personally, like, I look at a lot of our arguments, our discussions, and they revolve around the fact giving and the
Yeah.
fact finding, which is
Yes.
another tool in our toolbox. So I'm having this discussion with her, trying to drive out the facts, and she's arguing feelings with
Solve
me,
it.
and these
Of
feelings
course.
are true to her, but they're not true to the situation. And
They
I'm
don't
like,
make
honey, this is
sense.
not true
Yeah.
what you're telling me. Well, it is to me. Whoa. Ah!
Hold
I'm,
on.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Whoa.
come on
Yeah.
now, so we've got the fact giving, the fact finding, problem solving. How about the take charge tool that God has given us?
It's based on personality. This can be certainly way more pronounced with someone who has more that type A, or more that my dad you developed a survey, a personality assessment around a lion, an otter, a golden retriever, and a beaver. So if you're more the lion type, you're just naturally going to take charge. But I think certainly in crises, where there's a problem, there's an issue, there's a conflict, it's easy for us to jump in to take control. Whoa, something's not working. Here's what we need to do. If it's around a decision, it's easy to go, no, I think this is the right decision. And, even, my wife and I were refinancing our home. Rates have gone down a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit. And so we get there. So we're waiting in the lobby. We're going to go in and sign the 800 million, documents that you've got to sign. And you're like, what are we even signing here? And so she just had this fear all of a sudden, like, why are we doing the right thing? And so I instantly wanted to take control of her fear, because in my mind, oh, this is going to derail us. We're here, we've done everything, we're ready to go, we've talked about this, so it's that propensity to, in those moments, like that with my wife doing the refinance that I want to, we can't be all emotional right now. We've already decided this, so we just got to move forward. And so sadly, we can run past, the emotion or the fear. And I caught myself doing that. And I said, hey, whoa, I said, hold on a second, because what I was notorious early on in my marriage doing is that I didn't pay attention to my emotions. Why would I pay attention to my wife's? I didn't know what to
Oh.
do with my own emotions. Well, how would I know what to do with hers? So when she got emotional, I would say, hey, okay, first you got to calm down. That's one of the statements that we should all probably X out and delete from our
That's like
vocabulary.
a rookie mistake.
Oh man. Well, in behind that though, it's funny and we've seen people who do that, but behind it was that I feel uncomfortable, Aaron, with your emotion. I don't know what to do with them, so you need to get rid of them so that I don't feel uncomfortable. And that's all it was. It was me trying to control even what she was feeling because I didn't know what to do with it. Versus now I get that, man, emotions are neither right nor wrong, good nor bad. They're great information. It's a warning light on your dashboard of your car. Your gas light starts to go off. I can say to my car, you need to calm down. You need to stop that blinking light. And I can put a piece of tape and cover it to go, oh, good. No more blinking light. Well, I'm going to run out of fuel if I don't pay attention to it. And that's the same with emotions. God gave them to us. They're beautiful as signals, is information. What is it? So I asked Aaron, I said, well, okay, so tell me. So we're sitting there in the lobby, waiting for whatever. We're at the closing place, the whatever it's called. And and I just said, okay, so if your fear right now had words, what would you say to me? Which is a great way, even like when Erin is emotional and she's crying. That is my default. Erin, if your tears could talk, what would they tell me right now? Because then all we have, because then the goal becomes not to fix or solve, it's just to listen and go, yeah, tell me if your tears could talk, or in this case, Aaron, if your fear could talk, what would it tell me right now? Well, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm scared. We're not doing the right thing. That makes total sense. I get it. You've had a lot going on. I've been kind of driving this. And I know we talked, I know it made sense, but maybe in this moment it doesn't. And that makes sense just to validate her. And that's all she needed. And she is like, no, thank you. And I was like, thanks for sharing that. That matters to me. We didn't have to, cancel our home, the signing. We didn't have to do any of that because all they did was lean in to the fear and the emotions. And that's what you and I are driving at is
Yeah.
those different tools than we naturally do.
Yeah. I mean, we need to add some of this stuff into our toolbox. And a lot of times it seems that our wife naturally has it in her toolbox.
Yeah.
And so she can teach us the things that are natural to her, and we can teach them the things like
Right.
the problem solving tool and the fact finding tool and the fact giving tool and the task oriented tool and these other tools. That's
Yeah.
really
And
good,
that's the
man.
beauty of marriage is that you're taking two totally different people in we're becoming one, and we have all those gifts and strengths and tools and skills at now our disposal. And you're right, there are moments to where my natural tools are the one we need to take out of the toolbox and use. And there are moments that what Erin, her natural tools are exactly what's needed. But usually within that marriage, or even with our kids, it's more of those relational emotional tools that are needed first and foremost. And those are usually the ones that as guys, again, 80/20, those are the ones that guys probably need to develop a little bit more, maybe acquire altogether.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, we're talking to a guy who's an expert on marriage, but you've got 4 children. I've got 3. Now we bring the daughters and sons-in-laws into the mix. I mean, and then we bring the grandchildren. We never stop. So there's this relational component that we are forced, compelled to learn if we are going to raise our children up and our grandchildren the way they should go, that are not broken and wounded adults. And so this is really good, man. I appreciate this. Well, let's like change it a little bit here, and let's talk about guys. So we as guys, we relate. Just really quickly here, we relate differently to one another. And you talked about some way that we relate to guys. And I had a question on one of these, because maybe I came up with a fourth one here, but you have three. But I'm wondering if the three is, if this. Let me ask the question. So you talk about the stupid humor rule. So I just got back with a men's retreat, and I was the speaker down there. And the more they got to know me, the more they started smack talking, teasing me,
Right.
smack talking.
Right.
Is that the same tool, the stupid humor? Is it the smack talk tool? Same thing?
Totally.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we connect that way. That was
Yeah.
true for my brother and I. That was true for my dad and I. That's true for my son and I was just at lunch with my son, and, and we're sitting there just doing the stupid humor, the smack talk, he's actually working here at Focus on the Family. And so I was giving him a hard time, like, yeah, man, I hear you're not doing that great, and what is going on, and why, and we just there's a fun banter around that, and again, that can be a great natural tool
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that helps us as guys to connect, to relate, to have fun, to relieve some stress. I mean, laughter creates melatonin in your body. So that's what we often take to go to sleep. And so as we're laughing and being goofy and bantering, man, there's some real positive effect. I mean, that's releasing those hormones that all that's good. Try doing that then with your wife,
Oh,
your daughters, of course, my daughters, they can certainly trash talk back like the best.
you
Yeah.
have to be careful, man. It's funny when I speak to men, once they start teasing me and making fun of me, I'm like, oh, I got them. I got
Yeah.
them. They love
Right.
me.
Well, and again, that's a beautiful at one level. That's a great way to connect. Now, if all we ever do as men, when we're together, is to stay at that level, it's I mean, guys and husbands and wives, men and women, we all long. God has placed a deep, deep longing in our hearts to be known, to be seen, and that requires of revealing what's that inner life stuff, what's really going on, the hopes, the fears, the stressors, the good, the desires, the bad, all of that. And if we never get past the banter, if we just hang out and watch a football game and talk about the weather or banter, at one level that can create connection, but that doesn't create the deep being known. And that's why, again, I might have this great tool to facilitate wonderful connection. Even, hey, Erin and I do this. She was she I love to send her gifts, the little funny little videos or whatever. And so, my goal is to, if I can get a ha ha back, then I know that she was laughing. And so we do that throughout the day. She'll send me some, I'll find these funny things. But if that's all we ever do, we go out to coffee and just exchange funny little
Yeah.
images or videos from Facebook or Instagram, whatever. Again, at one level, that's great. We need to develop that tool, acquire that tool that allows us to go to that place to where we can be heart to heart, to where my inner life can get to know her inner life and vice versa. Because that's a depth. Well, if you think about the word intimacy, it's made up of two root words. One is to make known, and the other is innermost. So just the idea of intimacy is when I make known my innermost life, what's really going on down there. Now that requires safety, and that's a whole nother tool. I mean, that's an important tool for guys to develop, is how do we create a marriage that feels safe so we can be known with each other,
Especially nowadays in this culture where a lot
right?
of our people are growing up feeling unsafe. So, this, many half of our social media followers are women, which is ironic since we always only post to men. But it tells me that women really want to understand their men. So the women listening, I would say this: that smack talk, have at it. And I'll tell you what, this next one, here's the next one that's really important, is that women do life eye to eye. We do, men, we do life side to side. So this shared experience, like sharing an experience with your husband, if you're a woman listening, sharing an experience, with other bros, this is that pathway into that innermost, right?
Yeah, my wife figured this out long time ago that when she really wants to have a deep, meaningful conversation, take me on a walk. I feel like a dog. She just takes me on a walk because she knows that walking side by side with her, there's something psychological that we're actually moving forward. We like that feel. We're going somewhere. But side by side, she asks me things and I respond to things very different. That's why we call it windshield time. She'll say, "Hey, you know, I don't know where you live, but in the South, they have these big, huge, convenience stores called Buc-ee's. And so it's just like you feel like you've died and gone to convenience store heaven. I mean, these things are so massive. They're amazing. So one opened up, we live in Colorado, one opened up on the north side of Denver. And so she's like, man, let's take a road trip, go to Buc-ee's. I'm like, okay, because she knows that now we're side by side, we're looking out, we're driving, and we have these great conversations. So, I get that women love to go to those coffee houses and sit there and eye to eye, and I can do that. It's not that I can't, but just understand for a lot of husbands, there is something powerful about moving forward side by side. It helps us to share more than if we're I there guy we don't like to do the eye contact. I mean, for a lot of guys, that's like we're measuring who's in charge here and who's dominant. That's why with our dogs, you lean in with your eye contact in until they look away, and then it's clear who's in control. So that's why the deep stares at a coffee table. All right, I get that Aaron loves that, and I can do that because I want to sacrifice and serve her, but that's not my preferred way to talk.
Well, my wife and I
So
are going for a hike after this podcast episode, actually.
there you
And
go.
it's funny,
Perfect.
there's no other reason to go but to go. But she knows that when she goes, especially when those endorphins start kicking, we just go to a depth in our relationship.
We do.
It's way better than
We
sitting in
do.
a coffee. Hey, I want to talk to you in the No, okay, all right, But so we love to
Yeah.
share experiences with our bros. We love to share experiences with our brides. So what about this? So along with experiences and the stupid humor, I think is this concept of adventure. Like
Yeah.
as guys, we just want to go out and I don't know, suffer together, explore together, do hard things together, get into catastrophic events together. I mean, talk to us
Yeah.
about this thing and guys that we love to share adventures with each other.
Yeah, because that at the end of the day, that's what creates that bonding experience. Because inevitably something goes wrong, like you were
Oh
saying.
yeah.
In as we do shared crises together as guys, that's what bonds us together. And so it's not that we're doing an adventure that's going to go perfectly. That's really not going to probably do much of anything. It's we're doing something where we're getting rained on, or we someone falls into the creek, or just whatever it is that it's the shared crises that bonds guys together. Now, and that's true for relationships. When we go through hard times together, it builds a depth and a strength in that relationship. Because you've got to figure this stuff out together. And now you've got that shared memory together, and it creates a grit within that relationship, which is true too for our marriage. I mean, we tell people that, so as guys go, okay, I know I need to spend time with my wife. Like, what does that really look like? I always say, listen, do these three things. You need to have a daily check-in to where you ask her what was your high of the day and what was your low of the day, because that's going to keep you updated with each other. So a daily check-in, a weekly date night. Date nights are designed to be done to where you do something different. It's the new, it's the exciting that reactivates the parts of your brain that were firing when you were first dating. So a weekly date to where you're doing something different, oh man, the benefits there. But then you need an annual adventure with your spouse because it's the shared crises, it's the memories that are built from that. It's the man, we overcame whatever because it's inevitable. Even Aaron and I hanging out on a beach somewhere, a storm's going to blow in. We were at the beach taking a walk when this woman starts screaming that her husband, they were of advanced age, was drowning. And so, man, we kick in and we're dragging this guy out of the water. I guess he fell and she couldn't get him up. I mean, it's that, right? That's we cut our foot, whatever. It's that's the power of that adventure is that we're away together, probably going to go through something or some things, and that's the glue that bonds our connection, strengthens that connection, and all that reminiscing then that will go on. And we just did that the other day. Hey, remember last year we went, we were in Florida. Remember the old dude that was drowning? We pulled that guy out. Like that. That's a part of your story then. That's why even for guys, that's why that's so powerful for us as we camp and fish and hike and
Oh yeah.
mountain bike together, whatever it is. That's
Oh yeah.
that's why that works.
I just had a revelation when you're talking. I hate to say this because I know you hear this sometimes, but I heard years ago, I mean 25 years ago, maybe 30, I heard this guy say you need to do family vacations together because it's the suffering that draws you together as a family. I think that was your
Right.
dad.
It was my dad. He used to
Okay.
tell people, he would say, hey, the key to a great family is camping.
Yes.
And we're like, what? I can't think of a worse thing to do. Again, it's because, you know, we're camping and all of a sudden, wait, where's our daughter Murphy? Oh my gosh, where'd Murphy go? She wandered off, and now it's all of that. That's what it does. It's the Christ overcoming the crises. Well, in James 1:2,
Yeah.
it says when we go through hard times, consider that an opportunity. That's the cool part is that these difficulties that we face even on a trip together, there's opportunity there, and it's usually because we're going to learn something about myself, you, our relationship. Like we're going to grow because of whatever problem we encounter.
I remember. That's funny how you remember. We started
That's
camping years ago, and I remember
because
I
of
did this
him. I
men's
know.
retreat. I did this men's retreat, and I'm camping in a tent on the floor with one of my youth group kids who's now 40. I'm going, I'm so glad I stopped doing this. Why did I ever start camping? Dang that Gary
Right.
Smalley.
Seriously, I
But I mean,
agree. I curse
100%.
his name
Oh yeah,
because
I mean, but
I
it's, I
mean,
mean, they're making fun of me in the can, because I got my 58 years old, and I got to take a big Gatorade bottle to pee in at night because I don't want to get up 3 times a night, and it's old guy problems. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway,
right.
hey, we can talk smack about my pee thing later. But hey, so let's talk about these guys are going. Okay, Ramos, give me some tools, baby. Give me some tools. So let's talk about these tools that we as guys can learn from our wives. We
Yeah.
can learn from our daughters. We can learn from this podcast that we can really do to enhance our relatability, our relationship skills. Let's talk. You have 6 in your book. Let's talk about this,
Yeah.
and you've mentioned this a little bit on the walks with your wife. But let's talk about this open sharing tool.
Yeah. I mean, that's really it. Our wives long to know us. They long to be known. In if we can't go beyond the surface level, the weather, the facts of our day. I mean, again, that small talk serves a purpose. So it's not that I'm saying, well, that don't ever do that. It Small talk enables us to connect and relate to our wife without the emotional vulnerability. There's time. Like I always tell my wife, I know that you could exist 24/7 in this deep emotional state. I can't do that. That would be so exhausting to me. So I'm not going to always do that. So it's fine. But we do have to understand that our wife so long to know the inner life, to know our inner life, and for us to know their inner life. And that's really what it's about. How do we facilitate an experience of talking openly in letting, again, so it's, think about your inner life, your emotions, your stressors, your fears, the dreams. I mean, all of it, the good, the bad, like we've got to be willing to be known and to know. Just the other day, we were talking to some guy, and he gave us the most incredible way to do this that we've actually started using now. He said, "Hey, take an ordinary deck of playing cards that has these different suits." And so he goes, with your spouse, so go out to coffee, sitting at the table, whatever, laying in bed, go on a walk. Just you guys take turns choosing a card, and based on the suit that you choose, that gives you then the question. So for example, if it's a heart, well, that's emotions. How are you feeling today? Give me a couple feeling words. If it's the club, you think about a club, what's been beating you up lately? If it's the spade, that's kind of a shovel. What what has God been teaching you as of late? How is he working, in your life? And which one am I leaving out? The diamond. So the diamond, you think of a diamond, the beautiful diamond. So what's beautiful in your life? And I'm telling you, we did that the other day, and it facilitated a beautiful, open conversation between us that I didn't have to overthink. Now, we do things like we have like 300 conversation starters that someone can just Google Smalley and conversation starters, and you can download this app because I'm not that clever. And so it gives me 300 questions that we can ask each other. Hey, if you had unlimited money, what would the hobby would you, whatever, just
Yeah,
all that kind of
yeah.
fun stuff. You're just not going to think of on your own. So that's another way to do it. You have to have something to the women listening. Please just don't start with tell me how you're feeling. Like it just I it do we need more than just that. That's a hard one. It takes me, I always, my dad, so talking about my dad, Gary Smalley, he used to say that sexually men are like women are like crock pots, so slow to warm up. Men are like microwave oven, instantly turned on. I would say the same thing is true around communication, is that men are slow to warm up. In women, you can go so deep so quick.
Mm-hmm.
You're like microwave. So just remember, when you want to have those deep inner life conversations, please don't just chunk us into the deep end. Let's do a little
Yeah.
banter. Let's do a little small talk. Let's get a little warmed up, a little foreplay, communication wise.
Hold on a second. That is so good because I remember the microwave. I hear all these things from the '90s, and I don't remember who said them. But your dad said that. And if
Yeah,
if the women can treat their husbands the way they want them to be treated, we're talking about appliances now sexually. So if you want to be the crock pot, give us a little crock pot conversation first, a
it's
little
true.
foreplay. That is really good, man. That
Well,
is,
think about me. My wife will call me, and she is into this deep whatever. Oh, I went to pick up Annie, and look, and this person treated me, and I'm like, uh, okay, like versus let just kind of let's walk in the shallow end, and then we can go to the deep end.
yeah, that
Whereas
is
women can jump
so,
into the deep end. That's beautiful, and that's a part of their natural tool and their strength.
that is so good. Well,
That's beautiful. It's just we don't probably do that well.
no,
Most.
we don't. That crock pot microwave, that was I don't think I'll ever forget that. I think that's one of those things I'll never forget. That was really good, man. I don't learn stuff I never forget very often, so I think that's one of them. So well done, man.
It's
So
a credit
so
to my dad. I just reversed
I
it
don't
and
know,
used
man. I don't. You
communication.
reversed it. That was genius right there, man. I don't know. Hey, so I have a natural tool of problem solving, and
Yeah.
it hinders something. My wife will say to me, "I'm going to tell you something, but I don't want you to solve the problem."
Yeah.
So can you walk us through? I realize I'm missing a tool, and that
Yeah.
tool you call your patient listening tool.
Yeah.
Can you talk
Yeah.
to us about that?
Yeah. I always tell guys when you're in that situation, you got to go Lazarus. So just think of the name Lazarus. Remember Lazarus, remember he died. Jesus got to him and his family when he died. He was dead already. And remember, how did he ultimately solve the problem of Lazarus' death? Raised him from the dead. Like that is the best solution, the best fix it of all time. Lazarus is dead. I can fix this by raising him. Awesome. What we can't though overlook is what the order in which God did or Christ did that, right? When he got to the family, shortest verse in the Bible, what does he do? He wept with this family. And I think what's significant about that, and by the way, I'm not implying that I know Christ's motives here. I'm just saying what it seems like. So I'm just wondering if this is a part of the lesson. The old Teddy Roosevelt quote, people don't care what you know. They don't care how you're going to fix it. If you've got the world's greatest solution until they know that you care. And it seems like that's what he's doing there. Is he knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead from the get-go. I mean, it's God in human form. He knew all that. And that's why it always intrigued me. Why did he spend time weeping with that family first versus going, hey, everybody, I'm here. Just hold on, calm down, relax, stop crying. I'm going to blow your mind. He didn't do that. He chose to connect heart to heart. In communication within marriage, what usually goes wrong is when the goals are mismatched. So if my goal is to be brain and to fix something, and Aaron's goal is heart to connect emotionally, we're now mismatched, and that's why it's going to be frustrating. But if I recognize that, Lazarus, in other words, care first, weep first, go after the heart first, you can solve it down the road. I mean, that's just part B. But but I think for me, the best thing I've learned is that, man, people want to feel known, cared for. They want that compassion. They want the weeping, you know and and I saw this with my kids. I mean, when I really learned that I had a problem here, that I didn't have this tool, is when they would get hurt when they were really little. They would get up and they would beeline for my wife. I would be
Mm.
standing there and they would have to run around me to get to her. And I was
Wow.
like bothered by that. I'm like, am I invisible, like literally right here? Hello. Well, I just started noticing what was the difference. When they got hurt, I would say, well, obviously, when you go on your tricycle racing down the steep hill, you're gonna fall, you're gonna scrape. So how
Fact,
about you
fact
just
giving.
right? Solving, right? So
Yeah.
stop riding your bike like that. Versus watch what my wife would do. They'd run, she would pick them up and she just would hold them, just being present, not even
Mm.
saying anything. I got you. You're okay. You're with mom now. Everything's gonna be okay. And I just went, oh. So I really started to work on that. And I honestly, there was a moment that one of them got hurt and they came to me. And I was like, oh, finally. All right. I've retrained them. I've developed that tool.
Yeah.
And and so I think for guys, if we can Lazarus, okay, that means that I gotta care first, weep first. Jesus modeled it. I want to be like him anyway. So why not just do what he did, which is beautiful. And again, it also helps us not to be mismatched. Because I'm telling you, when we're in conflict, when we're dealing with issues, people want to know that you care first before you figure out the way out or how to mitigate whatever. And so again, our natural tool to solve, to fix, to problem solve, to do all that is great. Let's develop this tool like Christ did and go, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna learn how to go after your heart first. Care about that, be compassionate, provide empathy. I mean, most of the time our wives just they just want to be validated.
Yeah.
Makes sense that you feel that way, like I did with Aaron, with clothes, doing the home clothes. Makes sense that right now you're feeling really uneasy.
Mm,
I get it. Did I agree with her? No.
yeah.
Did I feel that way? No. None of that matters.
Yeah.
She did.
That was a powerful statement. None of that matters. She did.
Yeah.
And they don't know how much you care until they care. They don't know how much. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's really good, man. Well,
Just
what?
keep running that through and it gives
Yeah.
you an order. That just give me the goal. Give me the order. I can do it. That's what I needed. And that's why I like the idea of that tool. Because I was like, oh, I can do that.
Yep. Yep. You know, it's interesting. One of the things I see with couples when they, and in my own marriage, when there's a problem, it's I have to win and have my way. And that win lose mentality really is a recipe for disaster. Talk to us about this win-win tool.
Yeah, I think for a lot of guys, we're competitive. We don't like to lose.
Yep.
We've been taught that, our whole lives playing sports. So I get it. And we've probably developed that tool, that win tool, which is important for work. It's important when we've got to fix something at home. It's an all that. Like that's great. And so again, it's not to disparage guys, it's to say, hey, you've got this tool over here, great. But probably when you're dealing with your wife and you guys are trying to make a decision, winning is not the goal. In to remember that my wife is never my adversary. The evil one, Satan, is our
Yes.
adversary, not ever my wife.
Yes.
And that's his goal, is to disrupt our unity and our oneness. So he wants us squaring off, trying to win. That's what he wants. He wins in that, not us. And so Aaron and I used to do that so poorly. And that was part of what was so hard for us in those early years of our marriage, until we really started to learn that, it actually, you know, we're married. We're on the same team. Therefore, we will either win together or we're going to lose together. There is no win loss. And that was a huge epiphany for us. And that was a paradigm change, because now anytime we then walk into, hey, we need to decide something or we're figuring something out, we just approach it totally as a team. We will verbalize. I will say to my wife, hey, we got to figure this out. But now you remember, right? You and I were on the same team. Therefore, we will find something that we both feel good about. And it just, you see the shoulders relax. No one, it's safe. Like, okay. Like we were in the process of selling a home years ago, and we knew that we were going to do really well. We had bought this home, fixed it up. We were going to get a payday. We're so excited about that. Well, Aaron, dreamer, thinking about 800 things, new furniture and new this, and we can jacuzzi and build out that. It got so overwhelming to me, because I'm like, okay, first of all, you have spent like 8 times what we're actually going to make. You got to stop that. I got very overwhelmed with her dreaming about our our little bit of cash that we were going to have. So this one day she's talking to our daughters, our older daughters, and they're dreaming. They're talking about, hey man, we're going to get a hot tub and it's going to be in ground and we'll have like a little swimming thing. And I stood up and I said to her, I said, hey, I said, Aaron, stop. You promised me that you weren't going to spend, you will have a budget, that you will agree to that. And this is not a part of our budget. So I just did I tried to control. That was a
The
control
fact
tool.
finding tool.
Right. Going, you're outside of our budget. You need
Yeah.
to get back in line with that. And it's my job to make you do that because I feel overwhelmed. So again, it's noticing that in those moments, I'm trying to control her to change her so that I feel better. That's a horrible way to live. It's manipulative. And I don't know, that sounds gross when I say it out loud, but it's true. Um, I'll never forget. So I kind of did this big, energy. You gotta stick with the budget you promised. I sat down and I'm all like, I told her and got her back into line. And I see. So all the kids were like going, geez, Dad, what the heck? Like, what is going on? She gets up, my wife gets up and walks straight at me. And it was the first time in my life I kind of went, "Oh my goodness, she's gonna hit me in the head or something. What's about to happen here?" She came right up to me and grabbed the sides of my face. So now we're face to face. And I'm seriously, I'm like, "Oh boy."
It's getting uncomfortable now, eyeball to eyeball.
She goes, "You're gonna hear me." And I'm thinking, "Oh man, I've just set her off." And she goes, "I love you. We are on the same team, and I would never spend a dime unless it's something that you and I have talked through and we both feel good about it." And then she gave me the biggest kiss and then just like released me, went right back to the girls, and then they kept dreaming and talking. But I tell you what I'll never forget about that moment is how that made me feel, that the moment that she reminded me that we are on the same team and I'm not going to violate that. We will figure this out together in a way that feels good to both of us. That Say that to each other. Like it's true. I mean, there is no win-loss in a marriage because you're on the same team. There is no way, you know, we were watching a Rockies game the other day, and let's say our pitcher had, you know, threw a no hitter, but actually walked, five people, and we lost, 1-0. Well, he had a no hitter, which is awesome, and so of course that's a win for him. But his team loses, he doesn't win and they lose. They either win together or lose together. And that was a huge thing for me. And so that's a part of how I believe that I can lead within my families, to always lead Aaron into that process of going, whoa, whoa, whoa. I can see you're debating and arguing here. Honey, do you remember, right, that we're a team. We're on the same team. We're gonna win together, lose together. Let's figure this out in a way that feels good to both of us.
That the
And
win-win. Well, my wife will say to me, "What do we do today to give you a 10 on this? When we go on
right,
vacation, what's your perfect 10?" And
perfect.
so that is the win-win. What's the win-win here? So
Yeah.
what your wife did when she got up, grabbed your face, said those words and kissed you, would that in that moment, would that be the selfless honor tool? Am I getting close there? Because that's the one tool I'm kind of questioning. What is this one?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, to me, that's what we were talking about. It's the win-win tool. The selfless honor tool is when, as husbands, we're called to, as Christ sacrificed for the church, we're called to love our wives in that same sacrificial way. And so we will only sacrifice for what we value. That's why the verse that says, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." So the selfless kind of that honor tool, I think it's two things. It's recognizing that I need to be reminded and I need to remember how valuable Erin is, because as I cherish her and I get her value, well, then that impacts how I treat her. That's usually a nice reset for me to go, okay, actually, what I want to do in this moment is I want to sacrifice. Sacrifice is simply when we take something we own. So it's got to be we possess it and we value it, and then we give it away
Yeah.
to someone that we value. So Aaron had a Norwex mop. Don't even ask me what that even means.
I already know what one is, bro.
Okay.
I know what
Yeah.
they are. Are you kidding
Very
me?
expensive. It's a high, like I didn't know
We
that was
have
such a
one. We have
right.
one.
Well, I walked into our little pantry area and I'm like, why do we have like four mops? And I'm Aaron buys, I like to get rid of stuff. And so I'm like, I'm getting rid of, we need one mop. Well, I took her Norwex nut mop that looked nasty to me. I didn't know what it was, and I gave it to Goodwill.
Oh,
So that was not me sacrificing, because one, I didn't own nor did I value that mop. I gave it away, but that's not sacrificing. So sacrificing has to be a I value my time, I value my money, I value my comfort, I value whatever that is, and I choose in this moment to give that selfishlessly to you, because because that's who I want to be, and that's how I want to show it, because you matter. You're you're incredibly valuable, and I get that. Therefore, one time, Aaron, I don't know about in your house, but Aaron loves to have the bed made with all 89 pillows, perfectly situated on the bed.
Oh, we only have 11.
It's right. We have a lot. Well,
Two.
I love Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, said, making your bed is like taking off your shoes and then tying them. And I was like, that's it. That's my problem with making the stupid bed. I like to get into the bed how I got out of the bed. So Aaron and I, she's like, we need to make the bed. Great. If you want to make the bed, go make the bed. Until she hurt her foot. She was in a cast. And I walked into her bedroom. I saw her on one leg hopping around to make the bed. I said, Aaron, seriously, is this really like like I'm a psychologist, like that's nuts. Like what you're doing, like that's crazy. Like I'm qualified to make that diagnosis. I said, but seriously, is it really matter to you this much? And she said, it really does. And in that moment, because of how much I value her, even though I would never ever make the bed, especially when she's gone, that bed never gets made. But I did tell her in that moment, then I give you my time. I will make the bed from now on. You will never make the bed unless I'm on a trip or whatever. And that's our opportunity. But it has to start because we get their value and we understand that God is calling us as husbands to sacrifice, to give up some time or whatever in that, like in that example.
Well, my wife married a guy who had sleeping bags zipped together. That was my bed. So now I've got, I stand corrected. It's 12 pillows, not 11. I miscounted. But, it's funny. She's a flight attendant and she loves a clean house. So whenever she goes away for 2 days, the days she's gone, I sleep in the bed. I get out of bed. The bed doesn't get touched. It's the same gross. But when she comes home, almost every time she comes home to a well-made, to the best of my ability, bed, because I want to say to her, I know this matters to you and you are my queen and the queen of my heart. And because that matters to you, it matters, the things you care about, I care about because I care. That's really good, man. I was trying to figure out what that is really, really powerful. That could save a marriage. That one point right there.
Well,
Honestly.
because at that point we're operating within how God designed
Yep.
the roles within marriage, and He has very clearly said to us as husbands, first and foremost, sacrifice for her. Like when you read Ephesians 5, where all, it talks about the different roles, 70% of the words, I counted the words, are towards the husband. Think about that. 30 to her, 70% to us. There is so much more. She's being called to respect. I mean, we're being called to love sacrificially. Man, it goes on. We need to leave our family and cleave to our wife. The word cleave also means closely pursuing her. So it's an ongoing thing. We're called to be compassionate so our prayers won't be hindered, live with her in an understanding way. We're being told to nourish her, to cherish her. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's right there, like that. So when we're doing that, we're operating within how God designed that, and those are the kinds of tools that He's saying, "Hey, as a husband, man, I want you to treat her in a tender way." So what's the tender tool?
Yes.
Or
Now,
you know,
now I noticed the tender touch tool doesn't say tender touch, then have sex tool. It
right?
just says so you guys that think the tender touch, because I used to give my wife a massage, and that
Oh
was like,
yeah,
okay, that
that's
means
right.
sex is next,
That
and it
was
got
just
to
the
the point,
job
yeah.
before the big show.
Well, and it got to the
Exactly.
point where she would say, "I don't want to have sex. Don't give me a
Right.
massage," and I was like,
I
"Okay, I'm
don't.
doing something wrong."
Yeah. Well, and that's true. In that, and again, we can separate those out to go. We're being called as husbands to treat our wife with tenderness.
Yes.
And I tell you, a great question then is to ask your wife, what is it that when I do it feels tender to you? Like, what does that mean to you? Because you and I could try to define this, and that would look very different. Because what feels tender to me would probably not be how Aaron would define that. So, on any of these, even like compassion, hey, what does compassion look like? Like, what am I doing that sends the message that I'm being compassionate, tender? Uh, how would you know that I'm cherishing you, which means valuing you? Like those are the right questions, because then we get the customized answers, that we don't want to weaponize, but we want that information. And so, yeah, what does that look like? Often it's usually around the harshness that guys can tend to talk, because at work or between us, yeah, I mean that banter. I mean, there's times where we've got to be harsh and where we can be harsh, but man, our kids, I mean, it kills them. That criticism, that's the number one thing that when we research this makes someone feel unsafe in a marriage, is feeling criticized. Then I'm being harsh with you about who you are, not necessarily about what you did. I'm saying that you are this blah 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 person, you know. And so criticism would be the opposite of tender. And so again, I had to realize that because Aaron thinks so differently than me, that my tendency is to criticize how she did something. I used to I used to mock her for how she'd load the dishwasher. I'd be like, there is no way any of, like, let me show. And then well, I mean, is that being tender? There's probably a way to go, hey, either let me do all that, so I'll do it my way, or could we talk about this in a
Wow.
honoring, tender way,
It's
which we can.
interesting, Greg. So we have several women on our paid team here on our staff here, and I have found myself numerous times calling them and saying, "Hey, that tone I threw out there was wrong,
Yeah,
and I'm emotionally low right now, and hey, forgive me." So what I'm saying is, this goes way beyond the scope of marriage and your children. This is at work relationships, and I don't talk to women about anything except for work, but I
right.
get so driven that competitive drive thing comes out. I tend to be overly harsh, and like with the guys who work for me, they're like, "Ah, ah," but the women start to shut down, and okay, I need to acknowledge my unhealth right now and create a place that they see as safe because
Yeah,
I can dominate. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that we have a power that the media doesn't want us to know we have.
right.
We have a power, and we need to be maybe tenderness. I would not say with coworkers, but gentleness. That gentleness.
Understanding,
Yes.
seeking to understand them first before, yeah,
Yeah.
not assuming. It's all that, giving someone the benefit of
Yeah.
the doubt before we jump to those conclusions, all
Well,
that.
the cool thing about tenderness and gentleness, those flow out of a position of strength.
That's right.
Those don't flow out of weakness. It's only the strong that can be tender,
Yeah.
right?
Because we're not saying passive,
No.
saying tender. And you're right, that comes from, because again, the strength, the fact that we can, go in and have those tough conversations. I mean, that's a strength and a tool. Let's celebrate that. Recognize, probably at home with our kids and our wife, that's not at all what's needed. So how do we add that tenderness within that? What's been fun lately, I feel like what God's been teaching me as a husband lately is, like, in Ephesians 5. So Ephesians 5, 25, 26, and 27. Like 25 says, hey, love your wife is Christ loved the church. So that's sacrifice. We get that. But then it's so cool. It goes on to say that to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water, with through words, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain, wrinkle, or any blemish, but holy and blameless. I've read that a million times.
Yep.
Every time I hear that, I'm like, hey, like,
Washing with water with the
uh,
word, huh?
what? Like honestly, I just noticed that the other day reading, to where I was like, okay, what does this really
Yeah.
mean? Like, it didn't make sense to me. So I really dug in what is so cool. It's basically saying, beyond the sacrifice, which we all get, it's what it's saying is that God, that Christ, to his bride, the church, what he's doing is that he's nourishing her, building her up, helping her become the person that God created so that he can unleash her. In other words, he's investing and nourishing and doing all these things so that she is released. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I've never thought about within my marriage is, you know, almost this is my wife better off because she married me? Like, how have I nourished and built her up like Christ did the church? Because ultimately he releases his church through the Great Commission, saying, I've done all this, now I'm going, and now you're going to take this message forward, and look what's happened. In the same way, as a husband, as I invest and build into and nourish and do all these things, we're taking her and saying, you are now flourishing so that God can unleash you into this world. Every successful movement in our country has been female led. We have one of the greatest resources on earth, our wife, the power and the strength and who they are, that we can steward that and nourish and unleash that. That is what's so cool about these tools, is as we develop these tools, we're helping to help, we're helping her flourish so that she can be unleashed by God. And man, that is a powerful force unlike anything else. I, I'm not diminishing men in this moment. I'm saying, man, we got incredible strength, and God has told us to lead our wife so that we can unleash her. Let's do that well and watch what he does.
Well,
That's what's cool about these tools. That's what it
yeah.
helps you
Well,
do.
what's interesting is, the Bible says the glory of a man is his wife,
Right.
right? And so, and then what people don't realize, I wish guys realize this more. Your ministry flows out of your marriage.
Right.
Like everything that you do flows out of that. If your
Right.
marriage is not good, if your wife is not good, nothing is good. And so, I'm a big, we've got to really do well. And I know we're coming short on time here, but this time and energy tool, this is a tough one. A guy goes to work all day, comes home, he's tired. Now, my wife works all day too, but he wants to rest or sit around. She wants time. Talk to us about this time and energy tool.
Yeah, I think it's, the time and energy, the point is, how are we connecting and becoming best friends? Like I always tell people, Erin will tell me she loves me, that's great. I always say that, thank you, but do you like me? Like that matters more to me. That says more about our connection and our friendship than if she simply says she loves me, because that's she's being obedient there to her vows and the covenant that she's made before the Lord. But she doesn't have to say she likes me. So to me, that's what's behind why we're spending time, is we're trying to deepen our attachment, our connection, that friendship with each other. And that's why all it is, it's just learning, okay, so what speaks love to your spouse? Like, how do we do that? I know that for me, man, words of affirmation, when Erin is, affirming me. Women are so affirming. You ever watch women together? Oh, I love that blouse and that's amazing, that color. And, guy, we never affirm each other.
No.
This is not how we roll. I didn't get on saying, man, I love that hat. And man, the stuff behind that's how you decorated. And
Oh,
yeah,
thank
we just
you.
don't
Thank
do
you.
that. But when our wives do that for us,
Yeah.
oh man. So it's looking for what am I doing to cultivate that connection, that friendship, that want Aaron to be my best friend. And that requires that we spend time having fun, that we spend time in deeper conversation, that we spend time doing hobbies and having fun and just doing laughing together. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that does require time. I tell couples around communication that the danger in marriage is that we end up administrating our marriage to death. That, in other words, so much of our conversation is who's doing what, and we got to talk about the budget, and you picking up the kids, and hey, and on your way back before the hike, you got to make sure you go to the bank. Like that stuff happens naturally. You don't have to create that. It takes a lot to manage a family and a home. What never happens is that more inner life conversation, and that is intentional. We've got to choose moments to where we're, instead of watching the game, that actually we're going to sit down and play a game or whatever. Like that's when you figure out together what helps us feel closer and more connected, and we've got to invest time into that. But it's understanding that stuff will never happen on its own. You may wish it, hope it, all that other boring conversation that'll monopolize unless you put some boundary within that to say, hey, tonight we're not going to talk about the budget in the kids' schedule. We're going to watch our favorite show, or we're going to go out to coffee. We're going to go hiking like you're about to do. I mean, that's the stuff. And then as a guide to understand, and then when you're doing an activity, so, guys, they feel connected to their wives when we're doing something. So a shared activity. So going hiking is a great example of that. And that's really going to feed you. I know what would feed Erin along that hike is if I asked her, hey, tell me about the high of your day and the low of your day. Here, pick one of the card suits. What that kind of stuff, that's what usually speaks to Erin's heart. So if we combine those things, doing something in deep conversation, and we have those elements, man, I tell you, it just creates such a strong connection between us. So that's that tool of just recognizing, man, I got to actually reach in, grab it to use it, because it's not like that's going to happen. There's no cruise control in marriage. There's autopilot. There's no automatic tool that's just going to do the thing it's supposed to. It's just, you gotta choose. And man, I want my wife to know I choose her. Now, I do that perfectly? No. We're very busy. She's getting her doctorate right now. But we've got to carve that time out.
Yep. Well, it's like you said earlier in the podcast, daily check-in, weekly date night, month or annual vacation. And I'll tell you what, when you're living in the stress bubble of life, you and I are kind of on the other side of the stress bubble, but in that stress bubble of life, I would just say, guys, you can't afford not to do that.
Right.
If you don't do that, you're going to get to the other side of that stress bubble, and you're not going to know that woman that you've been married to for 30 years.
You will be married to a
stranger,
roommate or a stranger. You will have drifted so far apart. And that's why we do a whole conference called Resist the Drift. And all it is saying, how do we actively keep from, there's a natural pull. It just happens. Like, you can't change that, but what you can change is to make sure you do those three little things we've talked about: the check-in daily, the date night weekly, and then the annual adventure. And that is part of how you resist that drift.
And this has been so good. I've learned so much beyond the book. But hey, if they want to connect with you guys and your ministry, we know where they can get the book, but how can they connect with you?
Yeah, we do a podcast, Erin and I together, called Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. And so that's a fun way. You can ask questions. We'll answer your questions, send you a book if we do that. Otherwise, we work at Focus on the Family, and you can go to focusonthefamily.com and check out all these resources that we've been talking about.
Man, Greg, it's been awesome. It's been rich having you on the show. And hey, I look forward to seeing you Saturday night for dinner.
I can't wait.
Have a great day, man. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's message, and if you've got a bro who needs a little bit of relational help, make sure you copy and paste the link of this episode, send it over to your bro. And if you have not written a review yet, make sure you hit us up with a great review. We really appreciate that. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor, hear the deafening roar of the crowd, taste the sweetness of victory, smell the stench of battle, get in the game, get dirty, grind it out, pick up your relational tools, and be a man. We often forget, guys, that God has called us to steward the bodies He gave us so that we'll be ready, healthy, and spiritually dangerous to fight the good fight. That's why we're so excited to partner with Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. Join me on my journey by going to mountaintough.com and getting your free 6-week trial when you type in the code ARENA30. You won't be disappointed. Stay dangerous.